talk about Berkshire Hathaway, please. Berkshire Hathaway, on the 1st of May, before their annual meeting, okay, which was held on the 3rd of May, was trading around $811,000 per share. As of this moment, it's trading at around 755,000, actually plus 755,800. Question. Warren Buffett announced his retirement at the annual meeting on the 3rd of May. He's going to be replaced by a Canadian fellow by the name of Apel, I believe, at the end of this year. Seems to
Abel.
be a good individual.
Yeah.
Berkshire Hathaway owns, via their stakeholding within their company, it's been reported, 21% of Berkshire Hathaway is made up of Apple. That's 21% plus. Okay. American Express makes up 16% plus of Berkshire Hathaway. Coca-Cola makes up 10% plus of Berkshire Hathaway.
Hmm.
Berkshire Hathaway, as of this weekend, is trading around $755,000.
For the A shares, that's right.
That's $61,000 less than it did on May the 1st, essentially, before the meeting occurred. So here's my question for you. And we'll have a predictive survey question about this later in the show. Is there a significant danger of a loss in value to Berkshire Hathaway as Buffett retires, and the premium that's been priced into that stock because you had Buffett at the helm of the company, are they going to lose his brand value? Do you think that's a possibility? And also, if you want to discuss Apple, I know that you know and have some things you want to say about Apple. I just think that Berkshire Hathaway is in a difficult position that they're going to have to navigate very carefully over the next year.
Yeah. I do have some thoughts about that. We study that stock very closely. And so Abel, the guy who is going to be taking over for Warren Buffett at the end of the year when he retires, first of all, Warren Buffett is going to stay on as chairman until he dies. He is getting up there in years, obviously. So he will have a little bit of a hand on the tiller, presumably. That could just be for show. We'll find out. But Abel has been doing a very able job of running the company. He's run for several years now. Charlie Munger passed away a year or two ago. So that's another changing of the guard. So it is a very good question that I think all investors of Berkshire Hathaway have. But Abel, remember, has been running all the companies for Berkshire Hathaway that they control, and including the stock, the buys and so on, except for insurance. He hasn't been doing anything with Geico, for instance, which they own. He's just going to be taking that over as well, basically. So there is that. There's stability there. But the thing is, as you like to say, the perception of it is going to be interesting. And then the second thing, as you pointed out, is with Apple, because they control such a large amount of shares of Apple. The problem, there's a few problems. There's a lot of headwinds facing Apple right now. We all know them, but let's recount. There's the whole tariff thing. Trump recently got upset with Tim Cook, chairman of Apple, for saying that, well, okay, so we won't manufacture most of our phones in China because of the tariffs. Instead, we've just moved a lot of it to India and we'll continue to do that. Well, Trump didn't like the sound of that. So then he threatened that he was going to, put a tariff specifically on Apple if they don't manufacture in the U.S. Well, the problem with that is, of course, if you manufacture in the U.S., your iPhone is going to go up from about $1,000 to about $3,000 or $4,000 or even $5,000 predictably, because the costs of everything, from setting up manufacturing to hiring people to building road, whatever it is, there's going to be a lot of cost involved. So you have
Can
all
I
these
ask a
headwinds.
question?
Yeah.
Can I ask a question? Are Apple products, and I ask this legitimately as a person who has never owned an Apple product. I've bought them for my
Wow.
daughters. My daughters use them, but I'm not into having brands for the sake of having a brand. Are Apple
Me neither.
products, so the question, are Apple products that much better than everything else on the market? Are Apple
It,
phones that much better than Samsung phones or the so-called Android systems anymore? I don't think so. And
I don't know
regarding,
about that, because I was an Android guy and a PC guy for many, many years. And I just got sick and tired of both of these platforms constantly having bugs in them. And slowly over time. I didn't buy my first. As we talk here, I'm sitting here with on my MacBook Pro. I've got two iPhones, right here. I use one for work and one for personal stuff. I have a lot of Apple products. I didn't buy a single one of them because I wanted the Apple name. I didn't care about that. I just wanted something that was going to be stable, easy to use, and consumer friendly. Because I'm not a scientist, just like you were saying about yourself. And so I got sick and tired of. We used to call it the blue screen of death with a PC. Whatever brand I had HPs, I had Dells, I had on, and it was just like one thing after another. Or it was the Microsoft platform I was using at the time. There was always bugs with all these things. At least that was my perception. And I had friends that were, navigating over to Apple stuff, and they loved them. It was just the ease of use and everything else, and the survivability of it, the reliability. So I started switching over. I have not gone back. They're absolutely right, and I tell people that all the time. But that's just my personal experience. I'm not advocating.
Who was or is the fellow Ivy, I believe his name,
right? Okay, so
that left Apple and is now joined one of the AI companies?
That's what I was going to mention. So that's the other headwind that they've got, and this is brand new.
Mm-hmm.
So John Ivey, it's IVE. I can't remember if it's spelled pronounced Ive or IV, but he worked very closely with Steve Jobs in the early years for doing all of the design work of all these now iconic Apple devices, whether they were the early computers or the phone, the iPhone, the iPad, the apps that went in them. He was the design guy that came up with the overall look of it. And then the teams below them focused on performance and ease of use and that kind of thing. So to this day, they still use those designs, and they've still sort of become known as this sort of forward-thinking, cool design company, right? John Ivey now and forgive me if I pronounce his name wrong, he just signed a deal with OpenAI to work with them on something. We don't know what. It's some kind of devices. So here's the thing. You have Apple facing the other headwinds already. You have a lot of Apple products. This is the third problem they're facing. A lot of their products are maturing. It's like, what else are you going to go?
They're legacy products now.
They're legacy products now, and you can keep tinkering with them and make them a little bit better, which is what they've been doing for years now. But where's the next big thing? Where's the next Apple Watch or iPad, right? They're not pursuing the car thing supposedly anymore. We don't know. I have an interesting note about that I can get into later on about that. To an event I went to yesterday, and so you've got all these questions going on with Apple, and a lot of people are wondering: was the golden egg? Is it still golden? And so then when you go to Berkshire Hathaway, and as you said, 25% of their holdings is Apple. No, well, that's a big drag on their bottom line if something happens.
21% plus. 21. But it is a big percentage.
Yeah.
So is Berkshire Hathaway missing or gambling on a company that is in danger of becoming a so-called legacy company? Now, Apple has faced this question before. They faced it in the early 90s when they fired Job, and until they rehired him, and basically he developed the iPods, right, for the music.
No, Steve Jobs was fired by the guy he brought in to be the CEO.
Who was the fellow from Pepsi.
Pepsi, correct. So anyway, what happened was Steve Jobs got fired by the guy that he brought in to run the company.
Yeah,
and so he went off and did, in the late 80s, he started a new computer company called Next.
Correct.
Yep. And it got a bunch of financing and
no. But wait. My point is
iPod came later.
Yeah, I know. So when he was brought back, he brought in a new product. That's my point. He brought in the
Next.
iPod.
No,
or whatever.
He brought in the computer that I was just saying. He brought in
Next.
And the software
that didn't
that was
sell.
And the software that was Next became the software we use today.
Correct.
Because he integrated it with their existing algorithm and all that other stuff, and then it became super successful. Yeah.
But their big product that really started putting them over the top again was from the music business.
Yeah, iPod.
Selling this compact little thing with 300 songs in it, which everyone thought was, like a Sony Walkman or, the big boom boxes from the 80s and stuff.
But it was all digital. Yeah, you're right. You're absolutely right. Because the Mac the Macintosh computer was not, it was a niche product. It was superior to, in a lot of ways, to the other stuff out there, but not a lot of people were adapting it because PCs were sort of everywhere at that point. And that's why I was a PC guy at the time.
So where does Apple go now?
Yeah, I don't know. That's the open question, isn't it? They tried a couple of years ago with their VR headset, which did that big launch. I don't think that's really taken off, and I think that's because nobody wants to walk around with a thing on their face, no matter how.
I wonder
cool.
if they're going. Well, it has to be like sunglasses.
It is.
Once they get it down to
Meta's
sunglasses,
yeah, Meta's
that would be the
Meta's
change
figured
you
it out. I've worn them. They actually look cool. They're Ray-Bans. They actually look cool.